People think it's taboo to talk about salary and compensation and benefits, but let's be honest here. We're not working for free. We're not exchanging our time just to be exchanging it. Hello, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Ebony, and today we are doing a part 2 to how I got into my clinical research journey and life as a project manager. If you haven't seen the first video already, I'll go ahead and link it above. That'll have more details about my background, my experience, roles that I've worked in, and how I got into it. And today's video is more so like a follow-up to that video, sharing more so how to get a job, what to look for in a role, and just tips and tricks for working in clinical research. So if you're interested in learning more, just keep on watching. So I have my handy dandy computer here, my Notion, with all my notes on there because I wanted to make sure I did like a deep dive into this conversation and this topic for you all. And I also have the questions that you guys may have asked me as well. So if you see me looking over here, it's because my notes are over here. So first things first is, how do you find a job in clinical research? I've personally found my jobs in clinical research in various ways through various platforms. So of course, you can always use LinkedIn, Indeed are my main two, I would say. I don't really use a whole lot of Career Builder or Monster. I use like my personal network, so people that I've worked with before, seeing what their background is, where they've worked, where they are looking to go, or their suggestions for what I want to do based on the field or track that I want to go into, based on what type of research you want to do. So whether you want to do academia, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, you may look for companies that specialize in those avenues. When using LinkedIn, I personally don't apply through LinkedIn. I just don't feel like I get much traction going through LinkedIn. I feel like so many people do the whole auto apply or instant apply or whatever that whole little thing is, and I don't really know too many people that's gotten any type of job through LinkedIn. I know more people, they use LinkedIn as a stepping stone. So for me, what I do, I just look to see who's hiring. I look at the different profiles for the people that have their company listed on their profile, see their background, what things they have to say. I review the company's profile on LinkedIn to see if they kind of align or if they're even worth doing a deep dive on. And then I look at what roles they have available, and then I go to their actual website. So I go to their regular.com website. I look for openings there because sometimes they differ in roles that's available, and they also differ in information that's available too. Sometimes I'll find that on LinkedIn the salary range isn't available, but if you go into their private or like their official organization page, you'll see like information on like salary, and so in their benefit packages as well. Compared to LinkedIn, you may not have that information. Speaking of LinkedIn, I also find that some people have really good luck with working with recruiters. I personally have not used recruiters before. I've interacted with recruiters, but I haven't gotten any roles through a recruiter. So I've gone through phone interviews with recruiters before, and sometimes they were pleasant experiences and sometimes they're not. For me, a red flag is a recruiter who does not know any information about the role or any information about like HR related things. So anything about the benefits or salary. If they're just calling and they're like, or they're emailing you and they're just like, oh, we have a role open, and just the role title, but they can't give you any like high level information, to me personally, that's a red flag. I don't expect the recruiter to be able to answer any questions about day-to-day life or what type of people I'll be working with or projects I'll be working on, very detailed things, but I do expect a recruiter to be able to answer questions that are very high level. So if they're not able to do that, to me, that's just a red flag. Recruiters aren't a bad thing. Sometimes you can use a recruiter to figure out what's available and then work with the company directly, because sometimes there's recruiters that are available for the actual company, and then there's recruiters that are a part of a staffing agency where a company will hire out people, a recruiting team, to find team members for them. So sometimes it's just like, to me, I just feel like they're kind of too far away to know what's actually going on inside the organization. So me personally, I won't like write off recruiters by any means. They're like a great resource. They're a great way to find out what's going on and what's available. Another step or a avenue for looking for a job would be searching your network. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can always like connect with people that you've worked with before, connect with people at a company that you're looking to work with, college people that you've worked or went to school with. Even if you don't work with them directly or you're afraid to ask them what's available, you can always just look at their work history and see what's available like take down the company name or look at the company profile and see what's available. And if you're feeling bold and you're confident in doing it, you can always just message them and ask them, hey, we went to school together. I see that you work in study startup and I'm interested in getting into clinical research. Here's what I have as skills. Like a very small message. You can always ask them to have a small phone conversation with you or meet in person and go over your resume, things like that. Everyone's very different. I know personally for me, I haven't done this before, but I have gone through and looked at different people's profiles, saw their experience, their educational background, and looked at the company and applied directly to the organization. The next way I would say, like for searching for a job, would be a career fair. So I have not gone to a career fair for my experience, but I know the companies that I work for, they go to different career fairs. So we send our HR team and some people from business development, and they'll go out and they'll recruit people. They'll ask you what your interests are, what your background is, what you're looking for. Some people do interviews on the spot. Some people can help set you up for a phone interview, things like that. So don't mark off career fairs, especially if you're a person that's not coming out of college. I feel like people always think of career fairs for like graduating seniors, and they're like, well, if they're only looking for college students. That's not true. You can find career fairs outside of a college campus, and you don't have to be a college student or a graduating college student to go to a career fair. So don't mark off career fairs. So now that we have found our ways to look for a job, let's talk about what to look for in a company. So everyone's preference, I'll say, is very different, and these are just mine personally. This isn't to say that something that's not on my list. These are just things that I feel like a lot of people are looking for in a role, and things that like comes to mind instantly when looking for a role. So first things first, especially in this post-pandemic era that we're in, you have to think about the location of a role and their requirements. So for me personally, I enjoy working remote. I am not against an office position. My company that I work for now, it just has always been a remote company, unless you lived in that headquarters area and then you were able to go into work if you wanted to. But for the most part, they've always been remote. And so you have to decide in clinical research, you either are going to be an in-office person, you're going to be a hybrid person, or you're going to be completely remote. And honestly, it varies per role. It varies per what your company's needs are. It varies based on what your client needs are. And sometimes you will have to travel as well. Travel isn't always a requirement for each role, but sometimes it does come up in certain roles when it comes to going to, for example, a site initiation visit or a investigators meeting or a kickoff meeting. Like different meetings can be required to happen in person. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about what type of role that you're looking for. So me personally, I've worked remote for probably about 2.5, almost 3 years. So it's been a little while that I've been working remote. I do enjoy it. I personally do miss being in the office sometimes, but not in the sense where I would go and get a 5-day-a-week office job. Sometimes it's nice to be able to go in and talk to your different coworkers, see them in person, have the little, around the cooler. I think that's what they call it, around the cooler time, where you kind of just chat, bounce ideas off of people, and kind of just build really nice foundational relationships. So keep that in mind when applying for a role. And then you have to think about, when you're doing a hybrid role, how many times a week are you willing to go in? That's something that you can possibly negotiate. So some jobs, they'll let you choose, but they also tell you that you have to do a minimum of this amount or these certain days or just keep that in mind when you're applying for a role, and if you go further into the interview process, just get more details about that. That way you're not surprised when you are offered the role. Working remote. Everyone wants to work remote, and I totally understand. But you have to keep in mind like the rules and the requirements for working remote. So some people, they'll get a remote role and it'll say remote US only. It'll say remote North Carolina, remote no applicants in California, Minnesota, Idaho, or something like that. I don't know. So just keep that in mind when you're applying for roles as well, because sometimes your application will not be selected if you're in the states where they say they are not accepting applications, or if you're looking to be a remote worker and travel, you need to make sure you get a little bit of information about what your company is allowing based on that. Some companies, they're like, you can work remote and you can only work remote in the US. Some companies are like, you can work remote, but you're also allowed to go to Ireland or somewhere that you want to go and travel and be a digital nomad. I know some people keep it a secret and they don't tell their company where they're at when they're working, and some people, they're very open and honest with their managers and with their HR team about what's going on. I would say use your better judgment here, because there are cases and stories online where people were fired for working outside of the area where they said they were working, or they had issues where their computer was hacked because of IT security issues. So use your best judgment there. Alright, so the next thing that I look for when looking for a role and doing a deep dive into a company, whether it's during the interview process or during my interview process, or like reading people's reviews on Glassdoor, and what else is there? I mostly use Glassdoor, but sometimes you can find stuff on Indeed. Sometimes you can find things, I think, on like, depending on how bold the person is, they'll leave it as a Google review if they're able, if it's like a smaller company. But what else I use? Is it Career Builder or Monster? I don't know. Mostly Glassdoor and Indeed though will have it's like a good place to do or read through employee reviews. But I use information there in the time in my interview to find out more about growth opportunities and what, just in general, what they offer for growth and development. So whether that be how their promotions work, how they are when it comes to switching roles. Like for example, say I wanted to go from project management to just working in a data management role, or if I wanted to go from working in clinical monitoring to more so slightly startup, whatever the case is, just seeing how they respond to things like that. Is that something that they support, or do they help create a fostering environment to allow people to grow and try new things? I also like to see if they do different seminars, they host different conferences, team building events, whether it's like the larger team, like your department, or like your smaller team with your manager, what kind of memberships they offer in regards to networking. So there's different like societies and organizations that you can join as a person that works in clinical research. Does the company advocate for those type of things, or do they help support it financially? So that, because those things do cost fees, joining different memberships. So like just seeing how they foster growth and opportunities in the environment. The next thing I would say I looked for is diversity in their initiatives. So are they a company that only looks for or makes a statement during Black History Month? Or are they a company that just puts out a quote and it's just MLK and it says Happy MLK Day while you're working on MLK Day? Or is it a company that takes the time out to have different cafeteria chats where you can talk about different topics while you're at work? Or are they a company that does town halls when a tragic event happens? Like I remember last year when the massacre happened at the Tops grocery store, my company actually had a, like, what are they called? Like a circle, I guess, like a, are they called circles? I think they're called circles. They had like a circle moment where people can come on camera or off camera and just talk about what they're feeling, what their experience is, and just like how it's impacting them. And it wasn't only for those that were Black. Anyone can join, say how they feel, say words of encouragement to people, they have a Facebook page for work. It's called Workplace, and people share their different visits or ways of supporting minority owned businesses. So it can be woman owned, Asian owned, black owned, a business that is owned by a person with a disability or impairment or whatever the case is, a minority owned business. So you share a picture of you experiencing it. It can be any minority owned business, and they reimburse you for a specific amount, and then they also enter you in a drawing for I think it's a Visa gift card, but that's just like a nice little diversity and initiative and inclusion thing. Okay, so let's talk about some perks. For me, I kind of look at perks as things that's like kind of like a add-on to my benefits package. So I already want my benefits package to be good, but I also want my perks that I get to be good as well. So for example, like having in-person events, so like holiday mixers or happy hour events, different team building things where like you go to like an escape room or you go to do a team dinner or whatever the case is. Like last year, when was this, like in October I believe, my manager was actually in town for a summit for something else, and she made it her thing to want to meet the people that were in the area that were on her team, but also those that weren't necessarily on her team, but they work with us every day or whatever the case is. And I thought that was really cool that she took out of her time to stay longer in the area so that way she can meet more of the people, especially being in a virtual environment. Sometimes you just don't get to put a face to the name. Another perk I would say that I like or that I have is just having flexible work hours. So at my company we get flex hours where you can kind of log on late, log off early, or whatever the case is, however you want to use them, as long as you are getting your work done. Sometimes it's nice that a company just treats you like an adult. Like, come in, do your work. If you want to leave early, leave early. If you want to take a longer break, a lunch break with your friend, do that. Just make sure you're not missing out on anything important or missing any deadlines. Another nice perk is educational benefits. So do they help support with you going back to school or going to school if that's something that you want to pursue, further education, or if you want to sit for an exam, whether it's like your PMP or your ACRP exams and certificates or your SOCR certificates. Look into your company and see if they offer different educational benefits and opportunities to further your network. Travel perks. So I know it depends on the role and if you travel for your role or not. So for example, if you're a clinical monitor or a clinical research associate, you're traveling a lot for the most part. There are some non-travel roles obviously, but for the most part you're traveling a lot. So I know some companies, they offer you free access to any lounge that you want to get a membership for the year. They give you a travel credit card where you get to keep all those points and use them for your free travel. Of course, when you're traveling, your flight and your hotel is paid for, but I know some cases where I've worked with some people in different organizations where they'll allow that person that's traveling to stay a little bit longer or come a little bit earlier so that way they can kind of enjoy that city that they're in and it's not an issue. So every company is different, but sometimes you just kind of just have to see where you can kind of make things work for you. Up next, I would say something I look for is work-life balance. For me, I just don't believe in the fact that we were only put on earth to wake up, go to work, go to sleep, wake up and go to work. I just don't. Like, I don't even like that concept. I don't even like the concept of an 8-hour workday. Henry Ford, I hear, is the one that invented that, but that's a whole nother conversation. Work-life balance to me is just feeling like okay with the hours that I'm putting in each day, each week, and not feeling burnt out and overwhelmed and unsatisfied. Like, so for me, what that looks like is not having 10 1-hour meetings in a day when I'm only supposed to be working 8 hours. That means not working super late. For me, I do understand that sometimes I work with people that are in a different time zone, so they're on Pacific time. and obviously that's 3 hours behind. And so I do understand where like they need me to meet with them at 5 o'clock or 5:30. And for me, the way I help alleviate and mitigate my time so that I don't feel so overwhelmed and burnt out with that late schedule is that I'll take a longer lunch, or I'll start later in the day. So I won't start at 8, I'll maybe start at 9:30 or 10 or whatever the case is. Like, I just kind of make sure my schedule works for me. Sometimes people want to bog down your calendar with a ton of meetings, and that's just not functional for me personally. Like, how am I going to get any work done? Like, if I'm in meetings all day long. Also, for me, work-life balance is, do I have to keep missing out on things that are important to me because I feel like I have work that's more important? Like, some people, they have managers and team members where they make it seem like because they're obsessed with work and work consumes their life, that you need to be that same way as well. And if that's what you want to do, that's completely up to you. But for me personally, I don't want to be consumed so much with my work where like I'm unhappy and I'm unsatisfied and I don't even see any pleasure in it at work either. So I'm just unhappy in my personal life and my work life, and that's just not good. So to me, I think work-life balance is really, really important. Having a manager that supports and acknowledges work-life balance is also very important. Moving on, I mentioned this before, but another thing that I look for is just seeing what people believe and what they think in their outlook at a company. So whether that's reading reviews on Glassdoor or Indeed, or if you're having an interview, see if it's possible to meet with a couple of people that you will be working with. Whether you're looking to meet with people that you're actually going to be on a team with versus people that are just in a similar role as you, getting their insight and what their day-to-day is like is also a really good opportunity to see if you think the company will be a good fit for you. Now, I will put a disclaimer here. I have met with people that are in similar roles before, and they made it seem like it was such a cool job. But I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think anyone's going to like interview with you or meet with you and tell you that it sucks. So you kind of just have to listen to what they're saying, like what their emotions are behind what they're saying, and just judge their character there. Because I've met with people and they said, oh, I love it here, and then as soon as I got the job and I accepted it, they absolutely hated it and they were on their way out, and essentially I ended up becoming their replacement. So be mindful of that, but it's still worth exploring as an option to see if it's something that's a good fit for you. And then lastly, something that came to mind when looking for a company is finding out what the support system is like. Do you work with a good team? Are they respectful? Are they considerate? Are they empathetic? Like, are they human beings behind the work? Like, some people are literally just robots and all they think about is work. They don't care about blocking out everything else. They don't realize that at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all have emotions. We all have lives outside of this job. Like, you want to feel supported not only in your personal life, but also in your work life. Like, do you feel like something's going on in your personal life where you can't function to your highest self, or your performance is lacking because of something that's going on? Are you supported by your manager? Are you supported by your HR, whether it comes to you needing an accommodation or needing time off, or you need additional support because you're working in a space where you're not comfortable in and you need a little bit of help? So are you able to go to your manager or go to your team members to get that help and get the support that you need? That's also super, super important, especially when going into a new role and in a new industry as well. So do what you can to ask questions in the interview process and get a good idea and a good sense of where they stand in regards to that. People think it's taboo to talk about salary and compensation and benefits, but let's be honest here. We're not working for free. We're not exchanging our time just to be exchanging it. Like, we need something. It's not an exchange. We're not giving up our time for nothing. Like, we need to be getting something back. It needs to be a fruitful exchange or a meaningful exchange for everyone. So let's get into salary and compensation and benefits and things like that. So let's see. When you're going into a role, I would say do your research of what is expected or what's the average for that role. So for example, say you're looking for a project assistant role because you're not quite ready to be a project manager or take on a project coordinator role where you're looking for something very general and entry level. Just because something's entry level, it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice pay and compensation and your benefits. So for example, I'm just going to throw out a number here just to give an idea. This is not a guarantee that this is what people in this role make. So, but let's just say you're looking for an assistant role and you're getting between $35,000 and $45,000. You need to take into consideration, like, is that $35,000 to $45,000 enough for you to live off of? Is that something that you can make work because you truly want to be in this industry? Also, look and see like the job description based on what the salaries that they're offering, based on the title as well, because sometimes they'll put like a very entry-level title for a mid-level role to get away from compensating people fairly. So when you're looking into doing salary and your compensation and your benefits and things like that, make sure you do a deep dive into that. Not because it's not greedy to want to be paid fairly. It's not greedy to want extra compensation if you feel like you bring enough to the table. Don't let anyone talk you into thinking that you're not worth the salary that you want or that you need. Salary is, I mean, there's no such thing, but it's a three-way street. Like, you need to get paid for the work that you're doing. You need to be in a role or in a position or with a company that's paying you an amount that's actually livable. So many companies are expecting people to do so much work and they're not getting paid fairly. They're not getting paid fairly in a sense of the work. They're not getting paid fairly in the sense of their demographics. They're not getting paid fairly in a sense of their environment, meaning where they live at and whether it's a high cost of living city, things like that. So I would say, like, consider all of that when looking for a role. How does it work for your lifestyle, where you live, the work that you're doing? Is it something that you can make work for yourself? Like, are you going to hate yourself for taking a job where, say, you're only getting $30K, but you did your research later on and you found out that you should have been making $45K? And I know to some people, $15,000 may not be a lot. It's subjective, but you take a job where the salary just isn't good enough for you and you can't make it work in a sense of living and providing for yourself, you're going to hate yourself for taking it. You're going to regret it, and then you're going to be back on the job market again. So that pushes me into my next thing when it comes to salary, is always do your research, but also negotiate your salary as well. Always remember that, I hate to say it, but companies are going to try to spend the least amount of money possible. There is for sure a budget for each role. There is a budget, okay? There is a budget. And budget means that there's a range. So there's, like, for example, a role, let's say they pay between 45 and 55. You get 55 on the high end, 45 on the low end, and you come out at 52. Say that 52 is the average. Make sure when you're in your interviews and you're doing your research that you're showcasing yourself and advocating for yourself, because you have to advocate for yourself. No one else is going to advocate for you, okay? So you make sure you go in with what you need and the facts that you need and the research that you need to support the salary that you're asking for, and fight for it. Like, whether it's a case of you proving yourself in the interview, you may have another competing offer from a competitor, or whatever the case is, advocate for yourself and do what you need to do to get the salary that you want. I personally never have taken the first offer. Never. Honestly, I aim high. When people ask me for salary, I aim high because I know you're going to short me. I know I'm asking for more than what's expected for that role, but more than likely I'm going to end up at the top end of the budget that you have for that role. And I know for some people, getting a higher salary is taboo for them, or negotiating their salary is taboo for them. They just feel like they should be grateful to have a job, or they're afraid to have a job and they're afraid to ask for more, and that's fine. Everyone is different. So this isn't to bash anyone who decides not to negotiate their salary or ask questions about what the program or the policy is around salary and compensation and things like that. None of that. Just do what works for you. So if you're a person who you're just like, I'm not going to ask for more, like I'm just going to take what they're asking, that's fine. But just make sure like 6 months into the job, when you're no longer that new hire that everyone loves and being treated differently and it's all like flowers and rainbows, that you realize like, I decided to take this salary. Or when you find out that someone comes in after you and they're getting more than you, I feel like you should always remember that you chose not to advocate for yourself and you chose not to ask. So you have to remember that that's why you're at the salary that you're at. Now, if they tell you no, or they don't give you as much as you wanted, so say you asked for an extra 10 or 15K and they only gave you 8 or they only gave you 7. To me, that's still a win, because that's like you negotiated one area. So now you can negotiate the next aspect of your compensation. So people have negotiated their bonuses, their PTO, their office stipend. Like, it doesn't have to end with salary when it comes to compensation. For some people, that's just the beginning. So my tip here is to please do your research and advocate for yourself. That way you can feel comfortable and confident when taking a position based on the salary that's being offered. Now that we've talked about base pay, let's talk about some other things that come into play when it comes to compensation, and that is the stock options, the bonuses, the stipends, and things like that. I personally have not worked in any companies that were public where I was offered a stock option or they were public to be able to offer stock options, but I would say like it's something worth exploring, because as you know, like the stock market is a way to essentially cash flow your income into retirement, an alternative income, passive income, things like that. So I won't go into stock options too much because I just don't have the experience in that. But if you do have a stock option available, it is worth exploring and doing your research on it to see if it's a good fit for you. Most people, depending on their company, they do say it is a good option as a way to boost your compensation. I know you don't get the money up front if the stock grows, but honestly, the stock market is a place where you can kind of just make your money work for you, where you don't have to do the work yourself. So definitely look into that option. Next, I want to talk about bonuses, is whether that's a sign-on bonus. People do bonuses for performance, so end of year bonuses. My company recently did an inflation bonus, which I've never heard of before. So shout out to those people at the companies that advocate for themselves and speak up for everyone, because we got an inflation bonus at my last company and we still got our regular merit raises and our regular company bonuses. So one thing that I think is kind of a red flag that well, I won't say red because it may not be for everyone. I'll say is a yellow flag is the sign-on bonus. Sign-on bonuses usually require you to have some sort of commitment to the company. So let's say, for example, you get a $15,000 sign-on bonus. $15,000 up front sounds amazing, but it's not amazing when you hate the company, you're treated poorly, the work is just not worth it, and you don't want to be there anymore. And now you have to think about the consequences of wanting to leave the company because you signed a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract for a $15,000 bonus. Do you pay the $15,000 back? Do you have to worry about legal actions from the company? Every place is different. So definitely do your research when taking a sign-on bonus. I won't say don't take it, but just reconsider or consider what comes into play if you decided to leave the company prematurely. Do your research and make sure you're making a good decision for yourself. Don't let anyone talk you out of a sign-on bonus, but don't let anyone talk you into one either. Because remember, sometimes the sign-on bonuses is just for the company to benefit themselves and to lock people in. And so just keep that in mind, okay? Next, I would say are the end of year bonuses or like the quarterly bonuses. Every company is different, but some companies do bonuses. The company that I'm at now, I think, is my first company where I've gotten a bonus that was truly just based on overall company performance. Some companies do it based on individual performance. Some places do it based on department performance and then overall company performance. And usually that's based on a certain percentage. So during your interview process, they may bring that up. You can ask questions about during the compensation portion of the call or the interview, you can ask questions about how can I qualify for that bonus? What type of standards do I need to meet in order to ensure I earn that? Things like that, to kind of get a little bit of an idea of what they're expecting from you in order for you to get that bonus. Another way a company can compensate you, and I know some people say really it's your money, but they're just not paying it out to you, is through phone services. So the company will offer to pay for your phone bill. For the most part, I think companies usually cap that at $100. That's an extra $100. So that's what, $1,200 a year you can get and save. I know technically some people say like, oh, well, that's $1,200 they should have been paying you in your base salary. And yes, that is probably true. However, like I said, companies like to save money and cut corners where they can. So if you have a job and they offer to pay for your phone, that's a great perk to keep in mind. Also, companies offer wellness benefits where they pay for your gym membership, or they pay for your yoga membership, or whatever wellness that you decide to do, they can give you a stipend. Like, so for example, say your company gives you $100 a month to go work out or do some type of wellness activity. Again, that's another $1,200 a month. Not $1,200 a month. Ooh, that would be nice. $1,200 a year. So that right there, that's $2,400 that if you don't take advantage of it, that you're leaving on the table. And of course, it's tax-free money. So you get your receipts, you show proof that you did it. However, they want you to show your proof and documentation, and you take advantage of that money. Another thing is just like the office stipend. So some companies, they offer you $300 a year to get your office supplies, whether that be a desk, if they're very, very, very generous, or a second monitor, or a headset, or a wireless keyboard, or regular like printer supplies, or a printer, whatever the case is. Just make sure you're maximizing those different categories of benefits and compensation package, or compensation perks, I guess is the word, or extra perks, financial perks. I don't know, whatever little asterisk to put here, but make sure you're researching those and taking advantage of those as well, because if you don't, that's essentially more money that you're leaving on the table. I know me personally, I take advantage of my phone benefit, I take advantage of my wellness benefit, I take advantage of my office supply benefit, because it's there. It's already money that they've already set aside for you to use, and really if you just don't use it, it's just money that you're missing out on. So definitely take advantage of all of your options. All right, so we've talked about so far salary and compensation. We've talked about what to look for in a job, where to look for in a job, work-life balance, like so many different things. Let's go ahead and get into interviewing. So for me personally, I still prepare for my interviews. I know some people just wing it. They literally just log in. The interview is scheduled at 10, they log in at 10. And that's fine. Everyone is different, but the way my anxiety is set up, and if I really want a role, and if I'm looking to, like, it's just, for me, I have to prepare. So if you're a person who likes to prepare for interviews, I feel like you'll find this portion helpful. So let me share with you guys how I prepare for my interviews. So I, of course, research the company. I have reviewed like what their missions are. I looked at some of who the team members, like I look at their organizational chart and see like who is a part of it. I review the job description one more time. I review like their values, just those typical things when it comes to reviewing a company. But for myself, in regards to preparing more for the role in particular, I like to prep questions for the interview, questions that they're going to ask me, questions that I want to ask them. I make sure I like kind of scan my brain for examples of things that I know they're going to ask me. So like, for example, what's your greatest weakness, or an example of when something went wrong and how we mitigated or prevented it. An example of working in a team where everyone wasn't team oriented. Like example of when I didn't know something and how I navigated the issue. Like just different things that they'll probably ask. I also make sure I kind of brush up on my personal history in a sense of like knowing things that I've done well before, things that I didn't do well at before, and how I kind of got better at it. Working with difficult people, of course, how I deliver with customer service, things like that. I kind of just make sure I scan my brain and have examples of that kind of already to the forefront of my mind. And to make that a little bit easier, I use Post-it notes. So you can either use physical Post-it notes or digital Post-it notes. A lot of my interviews lately have been on the computer, so they've been virtual through Zoom or Teams or whatever the case is. And so for me, before I thought about it, I was using, this is my computer here, I was using physical Post-it notes because I like to write as well. So I would put the Post-it notes around my computer screen and make sure I kept my camera available so I can just look straight into the camera and then have my Post-its above. That way when I'm reading my Post-it notes, I'm essentially still looking into the camera. But then I thought about another way, and you can do digital stickies on your computer. I don't know if this is an option for Windows, but for Mac, you can make them translucent. So basically you'll have your Post-it notes all across your screen, and they're not blocking your screen, so you can still see the people but still also see all of your notes. And for me, it just makes it easier because I feel like before I would do that, I would always forget things that I thought would be like a really good talking point or like a really good example to showcase my skills. So I started doing that when I go to interviews, and the whole transparent sticky notes made it so much easier for me to be comfortable. Another thing that I do is I also have my resume. Depending on the person that's interviewing you, they literally might just go through your resume line by line. And so sometimes you just don't remember all that you do. Like, it's not because you're fabricating your resume, it's just that some things are just so far back. I've had people ask me about my roles from college and how those roles shaped me in my clinical research career. So sometimes it's just really nice to have your resume handy. That I like to do is I like to practice. So I'll ask myself a question, or I'll read the questions off my screen and I'll think of answers, and I'll practice how I'll say it. I'll take my time in saying it, and if they're like, I'll answer the question, and if it's something that needs like a scenario to talk through or something, that I like to look for questions that I know I've never experienced before, because I don't want to just say I don't know to an answer to a question, or I don't want to say I've never done that before. I like to kind of try to say, here's an example of an experience that's similar to what you're asking and how I navigated it. Or I never experienced that exactly, but let me tell you about a time that I experienced something very similar because it applied in X, Y, and Z, and I was able to do QRS, you know? I just think prepping with questions is just so important, especially in clinical research. And depending on the role that you're looking for, they're going to ask you about like FDA rules. They're going to ask you about good clinical practices and details about GCP and Alcoa and just auditing. Like, they're just going to kind of throw things all over to you. And sometimes they're going to throw things at you that you will never be involved in. I won't say those things, but sometimes you'll be thrown questions that you will never be involved in. But it's always nice to be able to answer them and showcase your skills and your abilities to essentially show that you're aware of what's going on in other functions or in other areas of clinical research. So I did want to give a couple of questions that you might want to ask in an interview, because I feel like once the interview is over, so many people just don't know what to ask when they get to that part where it's like, do you have any questions for us? I personally have had interviews where I felt like the people that were interviewing me rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like they weren't respectful or considerate, and I knew I no longer was interested in the role, and I was like, no. But roles that I'm super interested in and I really want, I always ask follow-up questions because it leaves a really good impression. It's also an opportunity for you to get an idea of what to expect in the company or what they're looking for in a person. It's just a way for you to kind of like see if the job's a good fit for you. Like, they're looking to judge, they're judging you to see if you're a good fit for them, but you should also judge and see if they're a good fit for you. Like I said before, working a job is a two-way street. You need to be just as comfortable and confident and happy as they are with you. Like, so for me, I won't go into all of them, but I'll just give you guys a couple of examples of questions that I like to ask. And depending on who I'm talking to and where they stand in the organization. My questions vary, and depends on how the flow of the interview is as well. Because sometimes you may think that they've answered and covered everything, but you want to just have like a quick second to just reflect really quickly and kind of just think about things they may not have touched on. So for example, for me, it's really important for me to know what your onboarding process is like. Is it not watching movies? Is it watching videos? Is it just reading? Is it shadowing? Is it hands-on training, like through a presentation? Or is it just like there's no training at all, you kind of just come in and you figure it out as you go? Or like my anxiety, it needs things like that. I need to know what the onboarding is like. I also feel like I need to know what to expect in the role, not just in general, but like what you're expecting from me in the first 30 days, the first 60 days, the first 90 days. So I'll say, what is expected of me in the first 30 to 60 to 90 days? Like, what skills are you looking for me to have used, or what tasks or milestones? Like, basically format the question to fit the person that you're speaking to. But I like to get an idea, so that way I can kind of know, like, okay, they're throwing me to the wolves in this job. I don't know, am I ready to just kick it with the wolves yet? Or am I looking for something where I'm a little bit more guarded and I'm really getting a little bit more of individual attention and a sense of more fostering of my skills and building me up? Like, some people are ready to be thrown to the wolves. They like to be able to do what they want to do because they do the job well. And some people, when they're really new, they want to have a bit more support, and you want to have a very strong onboarding and training foundation. Another thing I like to ask is, how does success look in this role and how is it measured? I also like to ask what systems people use, what systems are being used, because I like to ask them what their favorite thing is about the company and something that isn't their favorite, or something that they find that the company can work on or the department can work on, because it kind of gives you an idea of where the company has room for growth or where they have space to make a difference, and you may be that person that can kind of help initiate that change. One of my favorites I think is to ask is, based on my experience, what would you say would be a challenge for me? So of course they should have already read your interview. They should have already read your resume. You've already had a full interview. You were able to answer their questions, go through a little bit of details about your background vocally, because sometimes just your resume alone isn't enough to say who you are. It's just like a first look. The interview itself kind of gives like a better idea and understanding of who you are, what you have to offer, and where you're looking to go. So for me, I like to ask, what do you think would be a challenge? Because it gives me an idea of what I may need to work on, or maybe it's something that I didn't even think about speaking about because I didn't think it was important for this role, or it didn't seem, based on the job description, that it'll be important for this role. And then that way it kind of gives you a second chance where, like, if they have any doubts about you as a candidate, you can get that second chance to go in and answer and make that person feel like, essentially alleviate any negative thoughts or outlook they may have had about you as a candidate. Sometimes you're going to have them answer, and it's a challenge that you are just not going to be able to talk yourself out of. Like, you may just truly don't have that experience, but that's when you just reassure them, like, I have this and I have that, and I'm a hard worker and I'm a fast learner, and I'm really well versed in, like, for example, LinkedIn courses, and I'm getting familiar with this. I've used YouTube to get familiar with this process. Like, it's just like essentially like your second chance to put at ease any doubts that they may have. So I think that's probably one of my favorite interview questions to ask. Last but not least, definitely be mindful and check in with yourself. Make sure it's what you want to do. You're doing it in a time that you want to. Don't feel like you need to rush. The industry is not going anywhere. If you want to take a break between switching into this industry or switching roles, always remember to advocate for yourself, because you're the only person that will advocate for yourself. Make sure you believe in yourself, and only you know your true worth. So keep that in mind when going into any field or any role in any company, any job, any field, whatever the case is. Just make sure that you're believing in yourself, you're trusting in your skills, you're trusting in your abilities, because I am here to tell you that you can do it. I know it sounds cliche that you can do anything that you put your mind to, but honestly, you truly can. Like, I have been at a point where earlier in my career, I didn't think I could do clinical research. I was like, I don't have any medical experience. I don't have any leadership experience. And then I sat there and thought about it, and I was like, wait a minute. You were in a leadership role when you were in college. Like, you worked as a manager. You worked in medicine because you used to volunteer as a person that worked in the nursing unit. Like, you have experience and exposure. You just have to figure out how to tailor it to present yourself in a good way on paper to get that call that you're looking for. So if you have any questions, or if there's anything that I didn't cover that you would like me to cover in a second video, or questions that you may have that you'd like me to answer, please let me know down in the comments. I hope you found this video super helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.